Erika, you have become the historian for Black Holyoke. Mm-hmm. What was the seed of that germination of, I have to do this, tell the story of Black Holyoke?
So I think that my biggest concern was really about Springfield, right? And I say that all the time. I'm from Springfield. I grew up there. My family is from there. And so there was like a large history that I felt like from my family wasn't being told. And back in 2017, I had the opportunity to meet the archivist here, Penny, and the then director of the museum, Kate Preisler. And, you know, they were like, there's a story here that hasn't been told that we're really interested in, right? And, you know, my understanding of the history of like Holyoke has been very Puerto Rican based, very Irish, very Polish, you know, French Huguenot, you know, that kind of idea of like Black folks didn't live here, and the folks that did live here in my mind were transplants, right? Because I knew folks who moved to Holyoke. And the more that we kind of dug in the archives and went to different places, so the UMass archives, and to the archives here at the public library, and even the ones here at Wisteriahurst, I realized that the history of Black folks in Holyoke wasn't just, it's not a 20th century story, right? It's not even a 19th century story. This goes back to the 18th century, right? Before Holyoke was even established as a city or a town, right? And so the more I kind of like dug, the more we pulled out, the more people came forward, right? The more the community got involved, the more that I realized that one, is bigger than I realized. Two, it's bigger than me. And three, the more I spoke to, you know, students at the high school, and again, people in the community, so like elders in the community, the more that I realized that, you know, their story hasn't been told. And even in moments where they're like, oh, take a look at this documentary, you know what I mean? Like there's a whole documentary on folks in Holyoke, and you know, the conversation about the Black population is less than 5 minutes, right? It's just a snippet. It's just a sneak peek into the history, and mostly focused around like the civil rights movement. And so I think that the more that I've come to know the people here in Holyoke, right? You know, I started working in Holyoke in 2010 at the WIC office, right? But I didn't know the Black folks here. And I think the biggest moment for me was when I went to Bethlehem Baptist Church, and I was sitting there and I was talking to the folks there, and I told them my name, and someone said, that last name sounds familiar. And you know, I started to talk about who my people were, and they're like, oh, Damon, you know, Damon's my uncle. His father is Buddy. Buddy is a Daniels. Buddy Daniels grew up in Holyoke. And everybody's like, oh, I'm, you know, Buddy's cousin. Buddy's my cousin. Oh, and Buddy's related to this person by marriage. And I was just like, okay, here is not only where I'm supposed to be, right? Because I felt like I was supposed to be there before then. But here is a history of people that's not only significant to the population of Holyoke, to the history of Holyoke, but is also significant and is important to me and my family in a way that, you know, I would have never imagined. And so when you ask why is this important, when other people have asked why Holyoke, I think that it's a story that hasn't been told. It's a story that that folks know and folks have here in our community, right? In this community that is Holyoke. And I think it's a story that needs to continue to be uncovered, recovered, and brought to the broader public, and to it woven into the narrative of what is Holyoke and, you know, what this space is.
Miss Trudy, what do you remember of the march on Washington to the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King?
So I was the only one of 7 children that wanted to go with my mom. It was the longest bus ride I've ever taken. There were 2 buses between Holyoke and Springfield that went down, and I remember leaning against a tree because I was so tired and it was hot. My mother's like, get up, because he's ready to speak and you're going to remember this for the rest of your life. So we stood up and we listened to it. I was 15. It didn't have any real meaning to me, just a man speaking, but later on, years after that, he came to Holyoke and he met my dad, and I actually got to meet him in person at a breakfast in Amherst. So it was something that I'm glad she made me go to, but I had no idea what it was all about. There were so many people there.
Well, when you're 15, so much just like goes right past us. We don't even know.
It does, but I'm so thankful that I was able to go, and that it was simultaneously. They had the march here in Holyoke, and I think my brothers are in the picture in the front row there. Mm-hmm. So my dad stayed with the rest of the kids, and they did the march in Holyoke simultaneously as the march in Washington. So it was awesome.